Hello, I'm going to talk to you today about some tips for making good presentations. So the things that we're going to talk about today are a little bit random, but they all have to do with how to put together an excellent presentation. So the first thing we're going to talk about is preparation for confidence. So how are you going to prep beforehand, and how are you going to come off in a very confident way when you're giving the presentation? The second thing I'm going to talk about is agendas. So how do you lead the audience through the presentation in a consistent way where they feel comfortable? And then another tip is that you should be consistent from slide to slide in many of the formatting and font and content issues. And then the last thing is a 7x7 rule that many people who give good presentations use when they're putting together the presentations. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to show you sort of some bad examples of each of these, and then I'm going to show you a good example. So the first thing we're going to look at is preparation for confidence. And in this part, I'm going to show you what it looks like when you have a confident opening and then a not so confident opening.
Oh, okay. So, hi. So I guess today, the thing I was going to talk to you about today was how to be good at presentations, and so I have sort of a few things I want to talk to you about, and I don't know. I might not be that good at it, but I'm going to try to show you this.
And then now this is a little bit better introduction.
And I'm going to talk to you today about giving good presentations and some of the things you'll need to think about as you maneuver through giving your own presentations in the future.
So the thing I want to really point to is that you need to be prepared. You need to practice, and that will give you confidence and will give you the ability to start the presentation in a confident manner where people are going to be listening to you. So the next thing we're going to talk about is agendas, and there's kind of 4 areas that I want to point out. So the thing you really need to do is really think through who is the audience. What do they know about the topic that you're giving a presentation on? How do they understand, or how familiar are they? Have they seen you give a presentation multiple times, or is this the first time? Is this a topic that they have thought about deeply? So really understanding the audience, but then also understanding the audience so that they know what you're talking about. So give them confidence that this presentation is not going to go on forever and ever, but there's a finite amount of time. It also allows you to have continuity from topic to topic. In this presentation, the topics are kind of unrelated, and so it's a little bit confusing to go from one topic to another without kind of understanding where are we in the presentation, how does this relate. So agenda will help you do that. And then also this idea of where are you going? This is sort of a kindness to the audience that they will understand when the presentation is going to be over so that they can attend to themselves. If they think it's going to go on for hours and hours, they might check out. But if they know, oh, it's just a certain amount of time and there's some content I want to know about, that will help them. And then also you won't rely on memory to understand, for the audience to know where they are in the presentation. So related to that, do you remember what the next thing on the agenda is for this presentation? And I would guess that you probably don't. So I'd like to start over the presentation by using an agenda in sort of the right way. So I'm not going to go through it I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, but let's just say we start making great presentations, and I give you a confident introduction, and then I tell you these are the 4 things that we're going to be covering. I'm going to look at good. Sorry about my dog barking. I'm going to look at good examples and bad examples. And then the first thing I'm going to talk about is preparation for confidence. So I've highlighted that in the agenda. Then I go through this slide, which tells you to practice. Then I go to the agenda again and I highlight the agenda. And then I show you this slide where I go through each of the 4 topics that are related to why it's important to have an agenda. And I think that actually that is a better way of looking at agendas, and you can see how it's used. Now, there's generally three kinds of ways people use agenda in a presentation. The way I'm using it, where you show this particular agenda between each section, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to put the agenda in the corner, where on every single slide, no matter where you are, it shows the agenda. Another way of doing that is to show along the bottom kind of a progress bar, like when you're taking a survey or something. So definitely people use different methods. I often use the first method, but I think the other two are equally useful. So let's look at the third item in good practices associated with presentations, which is consistency from slide to slide. So these are the 5 things that you'll need to pay attention to when you're looking at the consistency from slide to slide. The first thing we're going to talk about is layout. So you see I'm using an agenda here in this sort of subsection where I'm going to go through each of these one by one. Now, one of the things you need to do is make sure that the layout is consistent. So the location of the titles and the use of bullets. So if you remember on the other slides, I had the title on the upper left, and then I used bullets, not numbers, so I changed that. And then I also want to make sure that the words match with the agenda. So it didn't say standardization on the original agenda. It says consistency from slide to slide. So I wanted to make sure that those words matched. So those are consistent. The other thing I want to do is I want to use one font throughout. So in this case, I'm using this font, and so I switched everything to this font. And then the other thing I want to do is I use consistent font sizes. So the size of the title and the size of the bullets are consistent throughout. The next thing I'm going to look at about is pictures and icons. Now, although this is a cute picture, it doesn't really match consistently from slide to slide. What I usually use is icons from a place called the Noun Project. And so this I'm using consistently from slide to slide, this color icon and these particular icons. The other thing you need to be consistent about is graphs, so that you use the same format for a graph, and if you're using a bar chart, you use the same kind of bar chart from item to item. So in this case, this is a really complicated bar chart, but this is also a complicated bar chart, but they're not consistent with each other. So if you're using both of them, it would be good to have consistent color, consistent labeling, consistent numbers, legend. So that kind of consistency important. And also don't use super fancy ones unless you use it throughout, so that people can understand what to expect. So being consistent in graphs is important. The last thing is consistency in colors. So in my case, I'm highlighting the words in the agenda with a consistent color. I've been using red, and that's because one of the things I often do at the beginning of a presentation is I decide on a color palette. I decide what it is that I want to use for colors, and then everything in my slide is consistent with this small set of colors. So the graphs would look like this, where I use in red and black on the graphs. The icons are going to be gray because they match the color, the palette. And so that's just a way of making sure there's consistency from slide to slide on when you're putting together the presentation. The last thing I want to look at is this rule of 7 by 7. So in this case, what you do is you put everything, you limit the amount of information you put on each slide to 7 bullets and 7 words per bullet. So that's what the 7 by 7 means. So in this case, I have this one slide here on there that says put everything on the slide. And you can tell that while I'm talking, you can't read this. And it's a whole paragraph to read. And it's impossible for you to read it. And so that's one reason we want to keep it to a 7 by 7. So then this is an example of a maximum words per bullet, 7 words per bullet, 7 bullets per slide, and make sure you need every single word. So examine every single word, and it doesn't have to be full sentences. So that's one way that you can make sure that every word is important. You don't have to have a complete full sentence. And if it's longer than 7 words and 7 bullets, then you need to read it out loud, because somebody can't read and listen to you. And then also, bullets are really just used to remind you what to talk about, and not necessarily to give the audience any other information. So I hope, then that's the 7x7 rule. So I hope that was a good presentation to give you some really solid tips about how to put together a presentation.